Do you have any shameless plugs you want to do? Like for me, I want to shout out to Katana sleeves and Dragon Shield sleeves. I love them both for different reasons.
I would like to throw out a shout out to Infinitokens, always.
And Infinitokens, whoever you are, you're the best. Keep doing what you're doing.
And give us free stuff.
We're not asking for free stuff.
Well, you're not.
You know, it'd be weird if we get famous and I have to set up a PO box and things and like a separate email.
How do we do that? All three of us live in like such different places.
We just open it on camera with one another.
But how would we do that?
I don't know. Just carefully. One of us gets the PO box, and the other two pay for it, or help pay for it. I don't know. I don't know how that shit works, man. I don't plan on going famous. I plan on this being like a 20 or 30 view channel.
I mean, we get more than that.
Yeah. Shout out to the people that watch us from, where is it, France?
Brazil.
Shout out to our Brazilian fans.
We don't know who you are, but there's enough to make a difference on the analytics.
There's enough for you to be a statistic.
Do I kick this one off too? Because I'm the lore master.
You can kick it off, and then I can go first.
All right, I'm gonna kick it off, and I'll throw it over to you. Let's do it. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Turn Zero Loss, hosted by the Magic Engineers. Today, we're going to be talking about some of our favorite MTG stories. When I say that, I'm talking about the Magic lore as a whole. So you can choose anywhere from the very first story in Magic to the most recent set that just came out. We're going to start with Sherry. Tell us a little bit about some of the stories you like.
Well, you see, you guys took the good ones, so...
There's plenty of other good stories outside of the ones we took.
And I took the other good ones. The other last two. You guys chose the blocks, and I'm like, that's a lot of blocks that actually have some good story in there. And then I'm like, what's my favorite Magic story? And it is the story of Yawgmoth and the birth of OG Phyrexia. So, if you're not acquainted with the lore on who Mr. Yawgmoth is, he is the OG daddy of machines. He started off in it's the nation of Thran, is what they're called, right? The nation of Thran on
Thran Empire.
Yeah, the Thran Empire on the island of Halcyon, which... Why did you have to... I saw that. Why would you do that?
For the people wondering what was going on, there's mysterious... and it was spelled wrong on the script, so I fixed it. it threw him off.
This is for our Patreon viewers. Why? Oh...
The Oxford comma.
All hail its power.
You know, that's my answer. I put in a different one. It's a semicolon.
Alright, go on. So he's on the island. Go on.
So he's on the island. He's a big eugenicist, which means he's already a bad guy. He takes over the nation of Halcyon with a hostile takeover, as any good media mogul or person who is vaguely evil does. And eventually he discovers, or it was through, I think it was with Glacian or Halden. I can't remember who was the person, but he discovers this world, this artificial world, and at the center of it was the maker of this world, who they found dead. And it turned out that plane was Phyrexia. It was an artificial plane created by an unknown previous planeswalker, and then he's like, I gotta have this. It's like, I've been searching for eugenics and perfection for all my life, and bam, he takes it over. He becomes one with the planet, basically becomes a god of a planet. Which, dang, man has ambitions. And because he has a direct connection to Dominaria, he basically freely goes between Phyrexia and Dominaria in the early days of Magic, converting people, making them Phyrexian, and doing a bunch of horrible experiments. And then he kind of starts the Brothers' War by getting his lackey Gix to help to corrupt Mishra, and then that also ends up creating the Urza Planeswalker, which basically affects the entire story of Magic. He's the guy who kicked this all off. And there's a lot of really good story with him, like the story of him and Gerald, and how he wanted to rebirth, or Yawgmoth decided he would offer to Gerald that he would revive Hannah from the dead, and who Gerald was in love with. And when he did that, Urza came in and was like, dude, it's not worth it. And then Gerald was like, but I need to. And he finds out that it was just a facsimile of Hannah, and he has to kill Hannah. And it's really interesting. I love the story. Have you guys heard the full story?
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm familiar with it.
Anyways,
I recommend give it a listen, give it a read, try to understand it through the cards first, then watch some lore recaps of it too, because there's a lot of information about this particular part of the Magic story out there. So
this was actually in a book.
If anybody's wanting to hunt this stuff down, there are resources available that give you kind of the best summaries of this stuff.
Yep.
Yeah,
and several of the stories we're going to be talking about are also free on the Magic website.
Yes.
That's if they're still up, because Magic website kind of broke right now. Some of the old ones are gone.
Yeah.
I think most of them are still up. So at least all the ones I think all the ones we're going to be talking about today are. So
yeah. Anyway, so Yawgmoth, and it's long story short, eventually Urza has to nuke himself and basically remove him from existence with our old buddy Karn to destroy Yawgmoth while he was still in Dominaria, and his body is poisoning the swamps of Urborg right now, and that's how it ends.
Yeah.
And that actually has a direct line of how in the story of March of the Machines, it's that same oil that was corrupting everyone else still that led to all these Phyrexians and the Praetors, and it's he kicked this entire big story off. It's kind of like the ever-flowing timeline of Magic the Gathering. My second favorite is the story of Karn, and Karn's story is sad.
yeah,
It's a story of being abandoned, and then being a beast of burden, and then having one friend, and then having his memory erased, but remembering that one friend just by something he says every day, and it's so sad.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable of what the man's gone through and what his friends will actually do for him, like Venzer giving up his spark to save Karn during the Mirrodin block. Is that correct, David?
I believe so. Yes.
He gave up himself and his spark to give Karn a second chance after his heart was corrupted by the Phyrexians after Yawgmoth. And he was also the same one who kind of had to kill his master Urza because he was part of the legacy weapon and destroy most of the planet. It's really messed up. He's the only planeswalker to ever lose his spark and then regain his spark, and now he's lost it again, which I presume means he's going to find a way to gain it again. Because I think that's...
We'll see.
But Karn, one of my favorite characters in Magic. It's a very sad story, but very happy sometimes. But he cares a lot about beings, or humans and other creatures, even though he was created as original just a hunk of silver metal. He cares about people, and that's what I like about him.
Yeah, shout out to the saddest plot point for him is when he gets put into a giant tumbler with a bunch of unkillable people, but he keeps killing them because Yawgmoth put him in there and wants to punish him, because at this point in his life, Karn was a pacifist and Yawgmoth was torturing Karn by having him in this tumbler, constantly being forced to kill other people.
It's really sad.
He's been through some pretty fucked up shit.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, David, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'll go next. So I have two stories listed up here. The first one being that I really enjoy the actual stories that were written for it, and I think they're the best Magic has produced, at least in a very long time. You can debate that if it's the best or not. And then the second one is I'm going to single out specifically for great integration within the set itself. So all the card art and the card events and the flavor text and all that stand out to me. So the one that I'm going to single out for the best written work is Ixalan Block. So if you're not familiar with Ixalan Block, basically Ixalan is a plane with 4 various factions or tribes: the Sun Empire, the Brazen Coalition, the Empire of Dusk, the Legion of Dusk, sorry, and what was the last one? River Heralds, I believe. It's hard to remember some of the faction names, but I think those were all the four. So basically, what ends up happening is after the events of Hour of Devastation, where the entire Gatewatch get TPK'd by Nicol Bolas, Jace, having had his memory tampered with by Nicol Bolas during the fight, ends up panic planeswalking over to Ixalan without his memory. And the first chapter of the story is just Jace learning how to survive on this island. You know, he gets buff, he develops some survival skills, he rediscovers his ability for illusions. Then he gets found by Vraska, who is on a job for Nicol Bolas to retrieve the Immortal Sun at the Golden City of Oraska. And basically what ends up happening is it's a four-way race between all four of the various factions and all the characters within them to make it to Oraska, acquire the Immortal Sun, and have its power, basically. And they all want it for different reasons. Like, Huatli wants to go to the Hidden Sun so that she can finally claim her title as Warrior Poet. Angrath wants it so he can figure out how to get back to his plane to reunite with his daughter. Jace and Vraska want it for different reasons. Jace doesn't really seem interested in it, but he goes more or less where Vraska goes. And Nicol Bolas wants it, so there's that tension that gets discovered there as well. And not to mention, Jace and Vraska become very close. This is like where the Jace-Vraska romance really starts, and it's very believable. And it's quite sweet, actually, because, you know, you see this nicer, kinder side of Jace that we never really see a lot of, because Jace is just a raging asshole most of the time. But here, he's actually a pretty likable guy. Even after he gets his memory back, he goes through some really solid development. Vraska also goes through good development. You know, her relationship with Jace helps her to realize that she doesn't have to accept things for as they are. She can choose to make them as she wants them to be. And it's a really awesome storyline. And not to mention, like, the whole, like, race for a Golden City, I think is just a great setup for a story in Magic. Because you can have these different factions, you can have these crazy flora, fauna, all these events, and, you know, you meet characters like Azor, who, you know, is tied to Ravnica, and then you learn what his deal is, basically hopping around from plane to plane to, you know, essentially impose order upon each plane. But then he just abandons the systems that he established without really figuring out why they work, and he just assumes that they just work. And he makes for a very effective and hateable villain in this set. So, and it also ends somewhat happily because, you know, the characters get what they want and they're able to leave, but Nicol Bolas still gets the Immortal Sun. He still has this plan, but Jace has a way he has an in, basically, with Vraska, because he sets her up so he can restore her memories at a later time. He deletes them for the moment, and he basically says, okay, remember this? I have this here. I'll restore them when the time is right so that we can get an advantage on Nicol Bolas. And I think it's overall an extremely effective and strong story that's very well written. And this one is on the online Magic set page. So if you want to go read it, it's free, and it's great.
Give this one a read. This one's a really good one.
Yeah, it's my favorite in terms of actual prose and actual development. It's really good.
Vraska, pretty cool.
Vraska is pretty cool. She's always been cool, but she becomes uber cool here. So for the actual second category I have, which is integration within the set itself, I have Scars of Mirrodin specifically, that block. So the idea of Scars of Mirrodin is basically depicting the invasion of Mirrodin by the Phyrexians. So you have all these faction, like these, obviously you have all the cards that depict races and characters already in the setting, like Leonin, Loxodon, elves, humans, and their various tribes as well as their golems and Mir. But you also have, you know, Phyrexian cards that go in there as well. And the conflict between the two is very notable because with the Phyrexians, you see some of the most broken mechanics Magic has ever had, with poison, infect, and proliferate being their cornerstone mechanics. And we all know how strong those are.
Yeah.
Whereas you have things from the original Mirrodin that go in as well, like Imprint, Charge Counters, Metalcraft, Mirror, Spell Bombs, and Indestructible stuff. And generally speaking, like it's a set that establishes a very strong sense of dread through the flavor text, through the actions of the cards, through how powerful some of these cards are, through some of the cycles that come into play. It's an extremely like there's not much in the way of actual fiction for this particular story. At least I haven't found it. If there is, I'm sure there is, but you don't really need it to understand the gist of the story. And that's kind of the best thing about it, is that the fiction isn't necessary to get the story. You just play the game and you understand immediately what's going on. And it works. It's very effective, even if a lot of the stuff in this set and block are broken. So
Yeah.
flavor win as far as I'm concerned.
Nice. I suppose that leaves me. Because I think everything... You covered pretty much everything for Scars of Mirrodin. I don't think there's much else to say. You got it. So, the first one I got on my list here is probably what we all agree to be one of our favorite planes that we wish we could go back to for many reasons, but...
Revive?
No. the Lorwyn block.
Oh, I thought it was Mercadia.
Very funny. So, Lorwyn in itself is a very interesting block because it's made up of essentially 3 phases that we got to see. And we didn't get to see the end of this story yet because we don't know what the aftermath is. But we know that the story of this set is that there's a plane, it's called Lorwyn, when we first meet it, where it's completely daytime all the time. Every single day is all day. So no sun, just the sun's always out, it's always daytime. Everything's great. The people of this plane consist of like a series of tribes, and this is kind of where tribal became very popular in Magic. So we got like the Boggarts, the Marrow, Elves, the Kithkin, Elementals, the Fae, Giants, and Tree Folk. Those are the big ones of this plane. We were also introduced to Planeswalkers as a new card type, but we didn't really see any in the story as a whole. But the story of it is essentially that every 300 years on this plane, there is something called the Great Aurora that switches basically everything on its head for the plane. So every character, every single tribe, every single, I guess, all people of this plane go from being one way to almost the complete opposite. So in this case, this transition goes from Lorwyn to Shadowmoor. And all the creatures of Shadowmoor are much more violent, and everything in Shadowmoor is a lot more dark, gritty, and you can see that shown in the cards themselves between the sets. So you can see things like Sig River Guide and Sig River Cutthroat between Lorwyn and Shadowmoor. You get to see the 2 different sides of them, and you get to see a lot of different developments between day and night for these people. And the story of it is basically, how do you stop this? Because the people that are on this plane don't realize that it's happening except for the Fae. The Fae are the only ones that are unchanged by this day-night cycle. And the fact that it happens every 300 years makes it very inconsistent, and it makes it to where daytime lasts a lot longer and nighttime is way too long because things are way more violent and it gets a lot more hard to live there. But basically, the story basically follows Reese and Aisling as they try to figure out what the heck is happening on this plane and how can we stop the Great Aurora from happening. And in the end, they do get it. They stop the Great Aurora, and it kind of made things weird where the 2 planes kind of merge, and you see things are happening in a weird way, but we don't see the resolution of that yet. We don't know. We know it's called Eventide, and that's what the end result of it. We know it's called Eventide and where the 2 exist together, but we don't know what's going on. We haven't seen the plane since. So we're kind of left in this open air wondering what's next for this plane. Can we go back to this plane? Can we finish what's going on here? Is there anything to finish? We don't know.
We need to go back.
Why haven't we gone back, Wizards? You cowards.
Yeah, I think we should go back, and Tribal should be a bit more focused on here.
Bring back Tribal Mechanic, you cowards.
So, the next one of my favorites is kind of more recency bias. I really like the March of the Machine story. There's a lot of good things about the March of the Machine story. If you haven't seen our review for the March of the Machine, go watch that. You can see a lot of my thoughts on the story from there. One thing that I didn't get to note during that set review is kind of like some of the big things that happened that made me like it so much was like things like Chandra finding out about Nissa, Chandra seeing Nissa completed like in the flesh, Liliana finding out about Jace getting completed, her like disbelief of it all, Tamio being killed right in front of Nashi, which is like her adopted son, Luca getting shit on at every possible opportunity. Love that. Hate Luca so much. Can't really explain why. He's just a dick. So he deserves to get shit on, and thank God that it was Vivian that got to kill him. That's all I have to say about that. But yeah, and then obviously we talked about the Vraska story in our set review. Very emotional story. A lot of good emotional hit points here throughout the entirety of the story. There's a lot of pacing issues. We've already discussed those, though. So I'm not going to hit this hammer any harder. Go watch that video if you want to hear more of my thoughts on the story. March of the Machines. Pretty good. On to my final story that I really enjoy is the original Kamigawa block. So the original Kamigawa block plays out kind of like an old-style fairy tale or like an old-style like Japanese myth where you've got your main hero, a couple supporting cast members, and then somebody that needs saving. It's really all like simple as it is. And our main hero in this case is Toshiro Umezawa. And Toshiro Umezawa is a thief who, when we first meet him, is a little misguided, doesn't really have any sense of honor amongst him, and he works for Hidetsugu to kind of like continue his thievery and everything like that. But in his time of doing all of the thievery and work that he's done, he meets with Princess Michiko Konda, who is the daughter of the Lord Konda, who's kind of like one of the big bad guys for this set, or for this block, I guess. And they kind of go through this thing where they're met by the Kami of the Crescent Moon, who his name is Mochi. And I'm kind of like reading through the notes here at the same time while I'm trying to like remember what the story is about. That basically shows that Michiko is kind of the reason why the Kami War has erupted at this point. So the Kami War is basically the Kami in the Kami realm and the humans and other walks of life on the mortal realm are kind of at war with one another and kind of constantly fighting. And there was something that was stolen from Okagachi, who is basically like the lord of all the Kami, that he is angry about, and he keeps sending the Kami out after him. Toshiro gets some cool abilities from the Myojin of Knight's Reach in order to kind of help him in his journey. And from here we get to see Toshi grow and start to kind of learn to be more kind to the people around him and actually try to help people rather than only care about himself. And you kind of see his growth throughout this entire story until it kind of like culminates in finding out that the princess was actually a piece of Okagachi all along. And she basically kind of like, they basically are able to defeat Okagachi and Lord Konda in the story and kind of and establish her as the leader of Kamigawa in the defeat of Okagachi, breaking down the barrier between the Kami realm and the material plane. So the two kind of combine, and they start to learn to better understand one another. And then the most heartbreaking part is that at the end of it all, the Myojin of Knight's Reach comes back and tries to steal Toshiro's life because he gave the ability to kind of save this all. And in doing so, when Toshi tried to like kind of defend himself, ended up on another plane of existence, which was in Dominaria, and also it took his sense of sight. So the life of Toshiro Umezawa was one of many triumphs, but he won't be remembered for being very triumphant. But his family will, because turns out the Umezawa family carried on even after Toshiro was long gone. So I don't know. I really love the story, and I kind of love the flavor of the entirety of Kamigawa as a whole. It's just kind of like my inner weeb talking. So it's kind of, I love it all.
Eli, certified weeb.
Called it.
Oh hush! So are you two.
Whoa! You can't be right and tell the truth.
So yeah,
Not allowed.
So yeah, tell us what you guys think of some of the stories that we've talked about today. Tell us what you think your favorite parts of the Magic lore are. You know, kind of give us an idea of what's your favorite part of Magic. You know, what's the story that really spoke to you the most? What got you most hooked on the story of Magic?
Bear in mind, if you say War of the Spark Forsaken, that is a bannable offense.
Correct. You're right. So don't say, yeah, War of the Spark Forsaken, not good. Don't ever say that. That's all wrong. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. Follow us at Lost Turn on Twitter, and we'll see you in the next video.
As an editor's note, you will not be banned for such actions. You can be wrong.
Liar! He lies!
You can be wrong, but we accept people being wrong around here.
He tells lies!